What's up, War Report family? We are back with another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. Thank you for making the Auburn Express your first listen of the day. Joining me, as he always does, every Tuesday to talk about his power rankings over at SEC Unfiltered is my guy, Chris Phillips. Chris, it was a busy week in the SEC this week.
Mikey G, what's going on, man? It was a lot of fun. We were in Jacksonville, Florida for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, and I can confirm cocktails were consumed at that party. Had a good time, though, man. I tell you, I was just curious, Mike, because I've been to so many great college venues and so many great SEC stadiums on campus. I was curious what it would be like at a neutral site. Again, I'd never experienced this game before, or a neutral site rivalry game such as that. Dude, it was as intense as any SEC game you'll go to, whether on campus or not. Georgia and Florida obviously both hate each other. The fan bases were great, though. Had a great time. Tailgates were electric. And now, yeah, man, we're gearing up for Week 11. We're coming down the stretch. Week 11, heading to Oxford, Mississippi. My first time ever experiencing Ole Miss and the Grove specifically, which I've heard many, many good things about. So, yeah, looking forward to it. It's always a pleasure, Mike, to jump on with you and talk ball, man.
Yeah, screw the Grove. So, look, jumping into these power rankings here, let's take a look at last week, as we always do. Week 10, you had Georgia at 1, A&M at 2, Texas at 3. LSU had a bye this week, but they will face off against Alabama this coming weekend. Tennessee at 5. We all know what happened there. Ole Miss at 6, Alabama at 7, and South Carolina rounds out the top 8. Now, we all know what happened. Auburn versus Vandy. So Vandy made a move here. Arkansas had a tough game versus Ole Miss. Florida, Missouri. I think Missouri was on a bye too, weren't they? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Missouri was on a bye. Auburn again. Mississippi State, OU, Kentucky rounds it out. Now, let's talk about it. Week 11. We got movement, Chris. Georgia is not one of the moves, so they stay at 10. Texas A&M falls from 2 to 7. After the loss to South Carolina. South Carolina's been tough, Chris. Mm-hmm. They've been tough. They went into Tuscaloosa and lost by 2 points. I've been telling everybody they're tough out this year. They proved it. Texas, they moved up to 2 in your rankings this week from 3 by virtue of the loss by Texas A&M. LSU doesn't move. Tennessee falls from they move from 5 to 3. Ole Miss, they won, so they moved from 6 to 5. South Carolina moves from 8 to 6. Vandy moves from 10 to 9. Auburn falls from 13 to 15. Let's talk about the top of these rankings for a second. I think maybe let's start the conversation at Georgia. I don't care how much Carson Beck struggles with interceptions. Until somebody not named Bama beats them in the regular season, they are the best team in the SEC, and they are the best team in the country. True or false?
I think, Mike, it's true until they get knocked off. My biggest issue is I think if Carson Beck continues to play the way he has, they are going to get knocked off. And I think very well it could happen this weekend in Oxford, Mississippi, even with a Lane Kiffin and an Ole Miss that has been in this position many times and they've fallen flat on their face. And, Mike, listen, I'll hear anybody out. It does feel – I have this feeling in my stomach where it's like, man, there's a lot of similar energy going as when Georgia was going into the Texas game, as them going into this Ole Miss game where it's like Ole Miss is kind of the sexy pick and Georgia didn't play their best football the last game. And, Kirby's just going to use all that as fuel and get his team ready to go. And they're probably going to come out and play really well. But, yeah, I think, Mike, to your point, I think it's fair. I think it's valid. I think Georgia right now, they deserve to be named the best team in the SEC, one of the favorites still to win the national championship. But this whole turnover thing just got to get cleaned up, man. Like, this is the second time, Mike, I've seen Georgia in person. Saw them in Tuscaloosa and just saw them over the weekend in Jacksonville. And I've had an opportunity both times, Mike, to be looking down the line of sight of Carson Beck and a couple of his interceptions.
Okay.
I get it. Quarterbacks throw picks, right? Like, it happens. Like, competitive interceptions where a DB makes a great play. Hey, man, this is the SEC. Welcome to the best conference in the country with the best athletes. But, Mike, that's not what's happening. Like, these throws he's making, they're absurd. Like, I'm like, what are you looking at right now? Like, Mike, we got to have a conversation that right now, I'm not saying overall, right now, Carson Beck stinks right now. He does. He's right now, he stinks. Look at him the last few games.
I don't know if I can get on
board.
Dude,
he is he cannot take care of the football. He's so streaky.
Is that relative? Though? Like he stinks for Carson
I'll just
Beck?
say this, man. I was such a Carson Beck defender coming in the season. People wanted to be like, he's just on a great team that carries him. And I'm like, no, he's not. Right now, he is. The defense is
like
bailing him
Brock
out.
Bowers and those guys, like it's looking a
and
little
the defense is bailing him out. And all I'm saying is this. I think Georgia very well can lose this weekend to Ole Miss. I'll take it a step further. I've picked Ole Miss to beat Georgia because I don't trust Carson Beck with – it's going to bite them. It is going to get them clipped.
I don't know if it'll be
and I think it could be – maybe it won't. Maybe I'll be dead wrong, but it's going to get them clipped, Mike. You cannot turn the football over at this rate and continue to get away with it. And I know, like, second half, the game slowed down. He settled in. But, man, you just cannot turn it over at this rate and win a lot of football games.
When you have all those athletes on defense, right, and you've got –
he's getting bailed out.
Yeah,
that's exactly what's happening.
But I would argue that in Stetson Bennett's first year, that defense carried them to that championship. This is why you recruit at the level that you recruit at if you're Georgia, so that you can withstand so-so performances by a quarterback and still have a championship caliber team. Look, it might not look pretty at times, but they just find a way to get it done. There's something about these Kirby Smart coach teams. Defensively, this is still a really good defense. They're very opportunistic, and for as many times as Carson Beck may turn it over, this defense can go out there and get the ball right back for him. So if he continues to get chances, now here's where you and I part ways on this one. I mean, he's still putting up 300 through the air, and he's over 60% completion percentage, and like I said, the interceptions feel very untimely. But I don't know whose heads and tails better than them that's going to be able to take advantage of that truly. I don't think it's Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. He craps the bed every time he faces Kirby or Saban. And Saban's gone, and he's still and so he was just like, all right, I'll just crap the bed against Kentucky since Saban isn't here. You think I don't know if they're gonna...
I think that's fair, but I will say Jackson Dart and what he's done, he has very quietly had a really, really good year. So could I see Jackson Dart out-dueling a Carson Beck? And, obviously the pieces they added. Listen, that Ole Miss defensive line might be the best D-line in the country. They've got 41 sacks, Mike, on the year. You're telling me Carson Beck under duress isn't going to make those back-breaking mistakes? And the reason I'm so passionate this, Mike, I was really hard on Garrett Nussmeier a week ago this time.
Okay.
About some of the decision-making he was, that he's been doing, and he's a turnover machine too. He's the Bayou Brett Favre. Like, he just loves to throw into coverage. We got to bring the same energy to Carson Beck, man. And again, at some point, if you go into Oxford, if you have a 2 or 3 turnover day and Jackson Dart is in his bag, and maybe, just maybe, this is the game Lane Kiffin finally has his best play calling day, I'm telling you right now, if Carson Beck has 2 or 3 picks, Ole Miss is winning that football game. You just can't convince me otherwise.
I'll believe it when I see it. I think
fair enough.
I think that some guys, man, they just figure out a way to coach them down in the biggest moments. To me, that's been Lane Kiffin, and I have not seen anything from him to suggest that this would be the weekend that he's going to break it. It would essentially just be Georgia playing down to the competition and just not getting any bounces, essentially. And like I said, those guys work so hard, they get lucky. And, you know that old saying, like the harder I work, the luckier I get. That's Georgia. So,
that's how I landed a spot on your show, Mike. I just kept getting after it, and finally you invited me.
Well, you're welcome back anytime. I definitely have you back after Georgia put belt to ass on Saturday down there in Oxford.
Fair enough.
Going back to these rankings, obviously South Carolina with the big win over Texas A&M, impressive win. Now, they've been on the verge of something special all season. Was happy for them. But let's jump down to the one we all want to talk about, because nothing really special happened in the rest of the SEC. Vanderbilt beat Auburn in another game where Auburn dominated statistically, Chris. This just doesn't make any sense. How do you lose this game if you're Auburn? Your defense did as good a job on Vandy as anybody this season.
Hmm.
And you lost.
Who did Hugh Freeze and the Auburn football fan base and the program, like what football gods did y'all piss off, Mike?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
And what did I text you over the weekend, Mike? Should I say it on air? Listen,
the aura.
Diego Pavia may have not had a great stat line, but it was the aura of Diego Pavia.
Was it though?
Had Hugh Freeze shaking in his boots. The man owns the state of Alabama. Can we? I don't know what the mayor's name is. But give the key to the city, the key to the state. He owns the state of Alabama.
I will give you the Bama performance because those stats looked very different. But I'll tell you, I don't know that Diego Pavia made any one play that actually won this game for Vanderbilt, more so than it was just Auburn not making plays that were there and deciding inexplicably not to give the ball to Jarquez Hunter a week after he ran for 278 yards and 2 tutties. Wow, man.
Obviously, I'm joking with you a little bit, Mike, just because the Diego Pavia thing is so ridiculous, honestly, and so much fun. But, yeah, I was going to ask you, because I admittedly didn't get to watch every snap of this game. He had to be hurt, right? Like, Jarquez Hunter.
We asked him.
How did he get 12 carries?
We asked him in the postgame. Hugh Freeze said, I thought he was gassed. And, quite honestly, that was bullshit.
I was like, is this like is this an Anthony Richardson situation?
Yeah,
we got a guy that.
Yeah, people were spreading rumors about him walking around in a boot like earlier in the week. That's just not true, dude. None of that. I confirmed all this directly with the sources involved. There's nothing wrong with Jarquez Hunter. They just had a different game plan going into this one, and they wanted to give the ball to Damari and Cobb. And so they had this like triple option looking thing going on. It worked at times, but the problem is that it was not consistent enough to produce wins. You know what does produce wins? Giving Jarquez Hunter the ball 20 plus times a game. Confirmed.
Mike, I know
friend Chris Marler made a whole graphic about it.
I don't think, Mike, I'm stating anything that you or any other fantastic Auburn fans watching this right now don't know already, but coaching malpractice is a problem right now. I just don't know. Like when we're talking about going into 2025, because this season, it's a wash. Hey, we were joking before we went live or started recording here. If you could beat Alabama into season, obviously that would really sweeten things up. But still, this has got to be the hottest seat in the SEC going into next year, right? I don't know how. Like, because if it looks, it does feel weird. But if it looks anything like this, and coaching malpractice continues, Mike, I don't give a damn what the recruiting classes are.
Do you remember, Chris, how good that 2019 Auburn defense was with Marlon Davidson and our guy up at the Panthers, Derek Brown? And they were crazy good. As a matter of fact, they held 2019 LSU to their lowest point total of the year. It was a 23-20 game. They were tough. They finished 9-4 in that season, and the offense was putrid at times. Now, Bo, I know is a better quarterback than Peyton Thorne by a long shot, but it was his freshman year, and he didn't have the best season that year. Auburn beat Alabama in that year. Bo only, threw for about 150 and a touchdown. Auburn needed 2 pick sixes to win that game. But the point was he played well enough that the outstanding performance by the defense was enough to bring it home. Auburn is playing below that level offensively, and it's being overshadowed how well this defense is playing. They held Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt's offense to 227 yards of offense. If I had told you that they would only get 227 yards of offense before the game, you would have told me Auburn's probably going to win that game.
I would have thought Jarquez Hunter might run for 227 by himself,
right?
Had they just gave him the ball,
right?
To your point, DJ Durkin's done a hell of a job with that defense.
Yeah,
like you said, nobody's talking about it because Auburn's losing football games and the offense is so bad.
Yeah, Diego was 9 for 22 passing. 9 for 22.
It's that aura, though, Mike.
I'm done with you. I'm cutting you off. You're done. You're done, Chris.
I'm getting a little too comfortable with you, I think, man. That's what it is.
I mean, your rushing yards were about even, 84 to 88, but you should have won that game. You know, I mean, it just didn't make.
I mean, you were also a touchdown favorite. Like, it's inexcusable for Auburn not to win that football game.
It is
inexcusable.
Auburn.
I don't care how good of a story Vandy is, and I picked Vandy, Mike, going in. I did. I picked them in this game. But I don't care. Like, from the Auburn perspective, it should be viewed as inexcusable, in my opinion.
Look, Auburn's got a bye week this week coming, so they get to regroup before ULM. They've got to win out to make a bowl game, so you got to be ULM, Texas A&M, and Alabama on the road to make a bowl game. It's probably not happening. And you got to find a way to hold your 2024 recruiting class together and be able to pair them with the 2025 kids, which means pulling off a big upset. If you don't make a bowl game, you got to upset either Bama or Texas A&M in my book. This is, Chris, in the spring, I went on our good friend Zach Blackerby show, and he asked me, what's the ceiling for this Auburn team? And I said 7-5. Fans lost their collective shit on me, bro. They were like, you don't like Auburn anymore, blah, blah, blah. I said, guys, if nothing changes, 7-5 is it. Now, where I was really wrong was I thought the floor was 6-6. I had no idea the floor could be 4 wins this season. That's probably the most shocking part of it, and that's when you start mentioning things like coaching malpractice. That's where that comes into play. 4 and 8
because you watch this team, Mike, and this is not a 4-win team.
It's not 4
talent wise.
Yeah,
it's not.
Now you made the decision to stick with Thorne, but you can't run your whole offense with him. I asked him, I said, hey, in the light of you being struggling to score, any plans to change play calling duties or what? He looked me in the eye and he says, no, maybe we limit the scope of what we're doing a little more. And I'm like, how much more can you limit it? You're saying this is like the 3rd week you said that. I don't know where they go from here, Chris, but I think
I'll tell you this, where they better go in the bye week, look themselves in the mirror and get ready to go, because don't sleep on General Booty and ULM. I'm telling you that. Listen, I'm just saying, you want things to go from really bad to terrible. Don't sleep on General Booty.
Before we get out of here, let's take one more look at this. Again, you got Auburn down at 15, Kentucky ranked below them, where they belong, by the way. I appreciate you not ranking Auburn dead last. But again, statistically, this defense is one of the better defenses in the conference right now, and it's just not producing wins. And I know that's disappointing for a lot of fans, Chris. Certainly disappointing for us covering it. But when you look at the defensive numbers total, for the SEC this year, I'm looking at Auburn, and in total defense, I'm looking at a defense that it's middling because of the time of possession that they've lost in some of these games. But you're only allowing 314 yards per game. That's pacing like 30, 40 yards ahead of that 2019 defense that I told you was so good. I'm sorry, and I just want to make sure I get this right here. In terms of total yardage or yards per game that they're allowing, Auburn is actually 6th in the conference. Ranked ahead of them are South Carolina, Missouri, Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas. Like, you're not giving up much. And 19 points per game, man, come on, dude. That's all you're giving up is 19 points per game. In any other season, that would set your floor at 8 wins. With an average offense, your floor would be 8 wins. And we'd be talking about this team as a fringe playoff team. Hugh Freeze has got to get it right in the offseason. Obviously, I think that I think it's time to just admit, same thing we used to say about Gus. Just admit that your offense needs a dynamic athlete at quarterback and move on. Right? Stop acting like you could do this with game managers back there in today's college football.
Yeah, I think that's what's got to be most frustrating, Mike, or one of the most frustrating things too, is it's like, what were we talking about coming into this season? Hugh Freeze is taking over the offense. He's taking over the play calling. And it's like, anytime, I mean, you would think if anything's going to be right under Hugh Freeze, it's the offense. And It's not.
It's not.
So at some point, it's like anything else, right? I mean, we've seen this with other coaches. It's like when your bread and butter is a deficiency, at some point, I'm not saying we're there quite yet. Let this happen again next year. We will be. But you get at a point where it's like, well, if the defense stunk, we could fire the D coordinator or if this position coach. But when this is your bread and butter, like, we got to get rid of you. Like it's you that's the problem. And
well,
if you're the head coach, that's a big problem for you.
Well, you just fired Philip Montgomery this offseason, and
you use somebody as a scapegoat already.
Yeah, and the results statistically they've moved forward from last year, but the results have not gotten better in terms of scoring. So, like you said, you can't scapegoat another guy. This is your responsibility. You've got to figure it out. Derek Nix is sitting in that offensive coordinator spot. See how you pin that on him. As a matter of fact, I was told last week versus Kentucky, he called the majority of that game. And from what I understand, that did not happen again this week with some of the concepts we saw them try to employ. But
giving the ball to Jarquez Hunter 12 times, if he was fully healthy, which you have confirmed he is just – it's malpractice.
Yeah. You're going to hear on social media a lot of stuff, dude. He was healthy. He was not in a boot all week. He was healthy, right? And he was not gassed, and he was just as miffed that he didn't get the ball as them. Like the whole thing about thinking he was gassed. I mean, if you did honestly think that and he wasn't, that's still coaching malpractice to me. Look, you can. I don't think Hugh Freeze should be fired. Right.
Not after year two. No, I don't think so either.
No. But you can still call a spade and say he has to get this right, and you need to feel that pressure. Gus, I think, was feeling that pressure down at UCF this past Saturday, and that desperation made him go to his fourth string, and it paid off. And for whatever reason, I don't know what's going to. Our fans ask us in the comments constantly, what's it going to take for this coach to bench Peyton Thorne and move on? And the answer is, I don't know. But what I do know is that you'll be back with me next week to talk about it. Auburn can't lose this weekend. So we'll see if they move in the SEC Unfiltered rankings. Chris, before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate you, man. It's always a pleasure. Always look forward to these segments with you weekly. We're at SEC Unfiltered, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your content. Also, YouTube, podcasts, and our website, secunfiltered.com. And, of course, if you've checked us out to this point, Mike, you've seen all the great SEC football content. The SEC basketball season is underway now, too. So we'll be covering basketball full-fledged, and we'll cover baseball when we get there as well. So it's content bleeding out of the eyeballs, but at SEC Unfiltered, wherever you get your content.
Guys, that's it for another great edition of the Auburn Express, powered by the War Report. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Los Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Go check them out at USA Town Center at 1220 Fox Run Ave, Suite 200 in Opelika, Alabama. If you are in the mood for some good Mexican food, which I know you are, last time Chris came down here, we went and got some Mexican. It was fire. The queso dip, the burrito, everything about it. They're doing it right. And if you're looking for a great place to watch the game, Chris, Los Amigos has TVs. They've got a great environment for the community to come in and enjoy some Auburn football. Please go visit them again at 1220 Fox Run Ave, Suite 200 in Opelika, Alabama. We'll be back at you guys next week with more Auburn Express, powered by the World.